seems like Nintendo actually listened to our prayers because the SNES Classic Edition is finally coming, and it's packed with so many incredible games, from Super Mario World to Link to the Past to Earthbound. It's really hard to complain about the lineup. With that being said, here are 6 games a few of the GameSpot editors wish the NES Classic had. If your favorite game isn't on the list, put it in the comments below, and consider subscribing for more videos like this one.
Although the IP is all but dead, Actraiser is a piece of gaming history that truly represents the experimental innovation that occurred in the SNES's heyday. While there were plenty of action platformers and a surprising number of top-down strategy games, Actraiser was the only one that deftly combined the two genres, and it featured a frame story that positioned you as the creator and protector of the world who needed to appease his followers in order to gain more power. Actraiser did get a sequel 3 years later, though it has skewed the strategy element entirely, and outside of releases on the Virtual Console and mobile, the entire franchise has lain dormant. But this quirky mishmash deserved a spot on the SNES Classic.
Pilotwings isn't a Nintendo property that gets a lot of love these days, but when the SNES debuted, the original Pilotwings was an impressive game that offered a lot of variety in a single package. Under the guise of earning various pilot's licenses, you were thrust into the cockpits of planes, into the harness of a skydiving parachute, and even buckled into a jetpack. Each scenario presented unique controls and objectives, but it was the intuitive and thoughtful controls that made the experience a pleasure, even when you failed repeatedly while perfecting your piloting techniques. A game about learning how to pilot various contraptions doesn't sound exciting, but the use of the NES's Mode 7 feature gave Pilotwings environments a sense of depth that was unparalleled in console gaming at the time. It was easy to respect the work Pilotwings did to differentiate the Super Nintendo from the competition, and it's disappointing to hear that it won't be a part of the SNES Classic.
Earthworm Jim may not be as iconic as Mario and Sonic, but the game he hails from combined platforming and 2D gunplay in a fun and uniquely bizarre package. The premise is that a spacesuit crash lands onto Earth and gives a normal Earthworm superhuman strength. Earthworm Jim used a cool art style coupled with excellent hand-drawn animations. Visually, the game has aged relatively well. It also featured some crazy batch levels that brought you to a planet made of mucus and a stage where you're navigating your way through intestines. The gunplay allowed you to shoot in 8 different directions, and the platforming allowed you to jump and swing from ledge to ledge using your earthworm head as the lasso. The game spawned 3 sequels and a children's cartoon show, and deserves to be played if you're a fan of 90s style platformers.
While the NES Classic Edition included Tecmo Bowl, the SNES Classic leaves out its platform's most iconic sports game, NBA Jam. It's a game that was just plain old-fashioned fun, 2-on-2 basketball where players catch on fire when they're doing well, knock each other down to steal the ball, and generally ignore NBA rules, making for an incredibly entertaining experience. The basketball game's appeal extended even to non-basketball fans. Its arcade-style gameplay is approachable and doesn't require in-depth knowledge of the real-world sport. Add in the over-the-top commentary and multiplayer-friendly nature of the game, and NBA Jam was seemingly tailor-made for inclusion as an SNES Classic release.
The SNES was one of many consoles that brought an arcade experience to the living room. But SNES games like Super RType had selling points beyond its similarities to their arcade counterparts. Part port, part remix, Super RType took 4 stages from RType 2 and introduced 3 new areas. Much of Super RType's appeal is how well it retains the original game's engaging weapon system. Some weapon pickups are more useful than others in specific situations and environments, and one way of mastering an RType game is knowing when to use a specific armament and where to obtain it. This also speaks to Super RType's high difficulty, which would have complemented the equally challenging Super Ghouls and Ghosts, a game that has been confirmed for the SNES Classic.
The Super Nintendo is home to many beloved RPGs, including the charmingly odd Earthbound and, of course, Final Fantasy VI, both of which enjoy a spot on the list of games bundled in the SNES Classic. While I can't really point a finger at Nintendo for ignoring RPGs, I can at least begrudge that Chrono Trigger won't be coming along for the ride. Chrono Trigger is regarded by many to be one of the best console RPGs ever made. It comprised an unusual time travel mechanic, had a complex combat system that allowed you to strategically combine character abilities, and had a really memorable soundtrack. And all of these are valid reasons to continue playing the game today, 22 years after its release. Chrono Trigger also represents an interesting crossroads for Square and Enix, years before the two companies merged. Chrono Trigger was devised by the leaders of two competing RPG behemoths, Yuji Horii of Dragon Quest and Hironobu Sakaguchi of Final Fantasy, and had additional input from the creator of Dragon Ball Z, Akira Toriyama. An interesting touchstone and an all-around lovely game, Chrono Trigger absolutely deserves a spot in the SNES Classic Edition's library.